Welcome back to Savage Showdowns. This week we will be taking a break from the battle arena. This week we will determine if a group of primitive humans could kill a sauropod, specifically a Diplodocus. But first, if you like this content, please give it a like and consider subscribing. It's free and it really helps the channel out. I feel that most people know the general size of humans, so for this video I will state that information quickly without much analysis. Humans in Paleolithic times stood about 5 foot 10 inches to 6 feet tall. They weighed about 150 to 170 pounds. Both of these numerics are for males, with females usually being a couple inches shorter on average and 10 to 20 pounds lighter, again, on average. The average speed, stamina, and stealth of prehistoric humans will not be discussed in depth. I will, however, note that the weapons of our hunting party, which will be 24 hunters, will be spears that can be thrown, which they will have an infinite supply of. It will also be worth noting that a primitive spear was believed to be thrown accurately from about 20 meters or 66 feet. So what does their target, the Diplodocus, look like? Size. The Diplodocus was 88 feet long and 15 feet tall at the hip. It had a relatively flat posture and weighed around 25 tons. This makes it several times larger than mammoths, which were a famous target of prehistoric hunters. Strength. The Diplodocus' strength, simply due to its size, was incredible, likely being able to move several tons with ease. It would be difficult to restrain, and its powerful tail could be whipped at high speeds, causing catastrophic results. Stealth. Since the Diplodocus was so large, it was not very stealthy. Speed. The Diplodocus walked at speeds of around 3 miles per hour, and it could likely not run faster than 10. Its tail, however, could be whipped at speeds exceeding 60 miles per hour. Weapons and armor. For weapons, the Diplodocus had its tail, which, as discussed, could be whipped at high speeds, and since it was so thin at the end, it could likely cut a person in half or do serious physical damage, while higher up it would send a person flying due to its impressive weight and speed. It also had its size, which would allow it to easily crush a person if they stayed near its legs for too long, just by stepping on them. For armor, the Diplodocus had its impressive size, strong bones, and a thick hide. These all worked to protect it from any predators it may have faced, including Allosaurus and Ceratosaurus. In addition, it likely had some scalation and spikes along its spine, further protecting it. So, could 24 primitive humans bring down this beast? Let's find out. I will first note that while our hunting party will be hunting this dinosaur, they have no prior knowledge of its attack abilities, speed, or anything else beyond what they observe as it actively occurs. We will use an open field bordered by a dense forest as our arena. In the field, a small herd of around 5 Diplodocus is walking, moving towards water, their next grazing grounds, or some other target. In the woods nearby, our hunting party is stalking them, selecting their target. For mysterious reasons, all these Diplodocus seem to be in their prime and healthy. The hunting party ultimately decides on one whose color pattern makes it easy to distinguish. The hunters move in, preparing a maneuver to separate their prey from the rest of the herd. They throw spears at the rest of the herd, causing them to run. A slight delay occurs before their target starts running, since it wasn't stabbed and didn't get the initial pain response to spook it. One hunter then runs in with a torch and attempts to use fire to keep the sauropod from pursuing the herd. It delays the sauropod long enough for the hunting party to encircle him. Once encircled, the hunting party begins throwing their spears, their infinite supply just raining down on this titanic herbivore. Some spears bounce off the sauropod's hide, but some stick and don't bleed, and some still penetrate deep enough to cause the sauropod to bleed. The panicked dinosaur charges, but is too large and slow to effectively close the distance between itself and the hunters in front of it. Some, however, are within the range of its tail, unaware of the danger of this weapon. The Diplodocus swings its tail, hitting 4 hunters and sending them flying, and cutting another 2 in half with the tip of its tail. The 4 hunters all land heavy, not moving, and the other hunters begin to panic as all hell breaks loose. The remaining 18 hunters continue to throw spears and avoiding the tail region as best they can, but their previous circle strategy has failed, and the dinosaur has much more room to move as it isn't being attacked on all sides anymore. Spears continue to stick, some getting deeper into the Diplodocus' flesh. The dinosaur starts looking like a thorn bush covered in spears and is bleeding heavily. A few of the hunters decide that they should go in and begin to stab and throw spears at the softer underbelly of their prey. They move in close, careful to stay outside of the range of the tail. Once underneath, they begin throwing spears at the underbelly, while some use the spears to stab at the leg, being careful to avoid getting close enough to be easily stepped on. The Diplodocus rears up and brings itself down in an attempt to stomp its assaulters, a maneuver the hunters weren't prepared for. One hunter, who is a little too focused on where he is stabbing with his spears, fails to notice this and is crushed on immediately under the immense weight of the dinosaur. However, the unexpected result was that the shockwave when the dinosaur hit the ground knocked all 7 of the nearby humans to the ground. The Diplodocus didn't waste this opportunity and charges. 4 of the hunters were able to get back to their feet before the Diplodocus arrived. The other 3 were trampled. Of the 4 who got up, 2 are sent flying when the Diplodocus whips its head in a similar fashion to a giraffe. Only 12 hunters remain, and the massive dinosaur is bleeding pretty heavily. The Diplodocus, sensing the weakening of its predators, attempts to run and catch up with the herd, hoping for their protection. As it runs, it whips its tail wildly behind itself, catching one hunter and killing him by knocking his head clean off. The remaining hunters continue to throw spears, and the Diplodocus continues to bleed. As the hunters are getting tired now, and while faster than the Diplodocus in an all-out sprint, they cannot maintain those speeds for as long as they can. The hunters are getting slower, and can't throw the speeds with as much force anymore. They are forced to get closer and attempt to stab the herbivore. Once they do, the Diplodocus is beginning to bleed more, but is able to attack, once again rearing up and slamming down, shaking the ground around it. Some of their hunters are able to remain on their feet this time, aware of what the maneuver will do. However, most still fall down and once again get trampled by the Diplodocus. Only 4 hunters remain, and they are exhausted. The Diplodocus is able to run 2 of them down, as they were too tired to outpace it. The final 2 managed to dodge the initial charge that got their compatriots, but not the tail that followed a little later. Diplodocus wins. It wasn't truly feasible for 24 hunters to bring down a Diplodocus from the very beginning. Estimates suggest that a group of 20 to 30 hunters was needed to hunt a mammoth, which was less than half the size of this dinosaur. In addition, they used traps and planted spears, not thrown ones when hunting. And while our hunting party did have an infinite number of spears, they didn't have infinite energy to use them. In truth, humans likely wouldn't have gone after such a creature in a group that size, and they would have given up much sooner instead of fighting to the last man, likely after the first couple of deaths. Additionally, the tactics used in this fight were likely not the ones that humans would have used if they did hunt this creature, and they would have paid a little closer attention to it, learning about its behavior first. But, in the scenario provided in this video, the Diplodocus won, its size ultimately being too much for the 24 humans. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. Feel free to suggest any future fights. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next Savage Showdown.